conversation. If you're listening outside Nigeria and then you want to contribute, or please remember to add international dialing code +234 as well so you can connect through. And don't forget, views to be expressed on the program is not in any way the position of Flow FM 92.7, but solely as expressed by the analyst this morning, Nicholas Onwarunoye. Let's keep our conversations very, very clean and civil. And we have 60 seconds, 1 minute to make our comment so we can entertain as many calls and contributions as possible.
All right, before we get into the conversation, this is also to remind you that we're streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook. And then all you have to do is go on YouTube or Facebook and type in Flow FM 97 and you can get in on the live action happening in the studio right now. Let's still pick it up from what we were talking about before. And this is still on the Workers' Day celebration, May Day. We have Akpabio hailing Nigerians, saying that Nigerians workers' resilience even in the face of challenges, and he described workers as the backbone of the economy and praised their unwavering commitment to excellence and productivity. So I'm asking, what do you mean by resilience and productivity when we also have in the same breath the NLC Joajero also saying that the 70,000 minimum wage is inadequate and is asking for regular adjustments, and there's been delays in the promised palliatives where they were talking about CNG buses and the taxation thing, heavy taxation on low earners and things like that. And it's like you're saying that people are productive, but there's nothing to help.
Yeah, commensurate, the productivity. Well, he has said it all really. Akpabio is saying that Nigerian, if there is a better word to describe the lot of Nigerian worker, I would have given it right now. To say that they are resilient is just understating the essence. I mean, the depth of the struggle of the average Nigerian worker. We are talking of we are talking of something less than is it even up to $46? That is the 70,000 naira we're talking about. Is it up to that? So we are talking of something that how much is the average per hour earning in the US? $7. No, I think it's more than that. Yeah, they're about per hour. It's more than that. So
$14.
$14.
Okay.
You understand? That is what you earn per hour. So what we're talking about is what an average US worker earns in just 4 hours is what we earn as a monthly salary for the average Nigerian worker. So it tells you of how impoverished, how poorly paid the average Nigerian workers are. And you see, things like this, when they happen, it has a severe impact on very critical sectors like health, like education. That's why you have this brain drain and Japa syndrome. I was reading, early some of the news items I was looking at. I saw that Abia State just increased the salary structure of their medical doctors to 500,000 naira. That is, if you're a medical doctor, you happen to work with Abia State government, use 500,000. So they had to up their game because they understand that is a critical sector, and that is what states now have to pay for, because we have a structure that does not reward workers. So looking at what Adedayo said, about non-implementation of for that 70,000 naira, consequential adjustments and things like that, it equally tells you just how should I say insensitive, or is it just a system that does just not see, the sufferings of the average worker? Imagine that, in some states, what you have is just a consequential adjustment, just 5,000 naira. What would that do? So it's really very sad, to be honest. It's very, very sad. And what workers are going through is, to put it mildly, horrendous.
We also have Rivers and Edo State where, today's Workers' Day celebrations were cancelled.
Wow. That's a new one. Was there an explanation given to that effect?
Political interference.
Well,
it was also George that made that statement, and he was urging, government to prioritize social welfare and protect workers' right to prevent further unrest. I think there's a little bit of unrest or something, and then they cancel.
One of the reasons might just be, Workers' Day will mean that workers congregating, sloganeering, and of course, maybe the governor was afraid that it could be hijacked by opposition elements, and don't forget that, you see, Edo State has a Labour Party. Is very strong in Edo State. And Labour Party, one of the principal, owners of Labour Party is the NLC. So that could be an explanation of why it was cancelled, And you see, it further goes to show the kind of, governance we run in this country. For an event such as that, unprecedentedly, you cancel it just because of political interference and things like that. That doesn't make sense. Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense to me. I think that, normally it is always best you allow things like that to happen so you can gauge, the feelings. You can even rate your own administration by such a development, by such, allowing such the ceremonies to happen. You understand? Why putting measures in place to make sure that there is no breakdown in law and order,
All right, just before we go on this, I move on to another story. For a number of years now, we've had the May Day celebration where we see state governors make promises as to the welfare of the Nigerian worker. Yes, statement coming from the federal level as well too. But it does look like little or nothing is done to the average worker. And again, still on the minimum wage of 70,000 naira, which translates that at least the average the least worker in Nigeria walks away with that's 70,000 naira. How can we improve the welfare package, for Nigerians? This time around across states that have not even implemented the 70,000. Should there be a law that will be binding on those state governors to pay their workers? Or again, are there other underlying issues as to why the state governors can't pay this minimum wage?
This is what I think. For me, I have always been against this issue of increasing wages. I have never been a fan of wage increase. Rather, what I advocate for is, those things that are basic essentials of life should be highly subsidized, should be made cheaper for Nigerians. Imagine if you take the cost of health, the cost of, reduce the cost of transport, education, take it away from the burden that the average Nigerian worker has to, pay for. Even 70,000 naira will be meaningful. That is just the simple truth. That is the way I see it. So that is why, you might increase it 1,000,000 times. You might put a law in place. But you see, the economy has a way of undermining whatever gains you.
Is this the practice in the diaspora in some countries?
No, it is not.
Because again, they provide some of these facilities and they make basic essentials of life cheaper. And then the wage is not even compared
they have a firm
exchange rates.
They have a firm control of their economy.
Okay,
that's just the difference. The economy is productive. If you I was listening to Peter Obi's Arise interview recently about that there is nothing wrong with removing subsidy. There is nothing wrong with floating the naira, but you see, you cannot do that in vacuum. There must be productivity to match up those things. You see, the reason why you devalue naira, that brings about this inflation we're talking about, is because you are producing. So when you produce and you devalue naira, of course, they will buy it in naira terms. When they bring their dollar will come in more so that you can get to sell. Because people tend to buy things when they are cheaper. So if you produce, if there is export, then you bring in forex, then you earn money in forex. Then when you convert it to naira locally, it's big money for you. So that is where things are different. But because we are not producing, the capacity utilization, industrial capacity utilization is almost at 20%. It's nothing. We are not producing anything. So that is why the economy is distressed. That is why you see a lot of us struggling. You understand? So, all those items, that you need to ameliorate these things are imported. So they have to be paid for. So, unfortunately, rather than government bearing the burden, they allow the impoverished workers to bear the burden themselves. That's the difference. In all these developed economies you are talking about, you understand, you see some measure of even subsidy. Like in the US, for instance, agriculture is highly subsidized. You understand? That is the essence of it. Look, what's all this? What is Trump doing? That has got the world or the entire world in a bind. It's about protecting his economy. You understand? You see that it's no longer a market system of things anymore. He is really putting the back of, that is influencing how American goods and services are priced in the market, in the international global market. So that is the duty that the government owes its citizen.
Lastly, on the workers' celebration, let's talk about the average Nigerian worker. And when this comes to mind, you look at the civil service, right? And what is the level of their productivity, as to their commitment and their attitude towards work and all of this?
Well, you see, it's a case of the chick or the egg, which comes first, really. You see, it is abysmal. But is that state as a result of their the poor remuneration? Or is it just that is what they are, really, even if you increase the money? That is out for, that is still out, the jury is still out on that. You're right. It's a very apt observation, because you see, workers too need to up their game, because you go to most of this civil service, you go to government offices and see the laissez-faire attitude they have there. Then of course you look at the recruitment, the quality of humans that they even bring in to come and work. You understand? So it's like a government job is nobody's job. You understand? Of course, you talk of productivity, which is good, but you see, it is so easy to say that, but then they can equally argue that for the pittance you pay, you should be lucky that I'm even putting in this much. You understand? Okay, let me give you a very good example. If, say, somebody lives in, say, a young Korean, for instance, and has a job in UITH, I'm talking of University of Teaching Hospital. Now look at the cost of transportation. Yeah. Look at the cost of transportation from that place to
and fro.
So to and fro. So we are talking of something close to 2,500. That is if you factor in what he has to eat, mai and bread, akara and bread, just to hold body and soul together. At the end of the day, calculate that in a month. How much is he paid if it's just a level 3, step 1 worker? You understand? So we are talking of, maybe 70,000 naira or thereabout. You understand? So deduct that from his monthly salary. So how does that kind of a person that has maybe like 2-3 children that goes to school, he has to pay for health, he has to pay his rent. So if he misses out coming to office 1 or 2 days, you understand? You say he's not productive, right? But have we factored in some of these factors that I just outlined? So that is what we're talking about. So you need to pay them well before you can fire them, before you can really gauge whether they are productive or not.
All right, let's move away from that, from the conversation, and onto another one. This is about the INEC. They are moving to strip precedent of power to appoint electoral commissioners. INEC is proposing amendments to the electoral framework that would remove the president's power to appoint resident electoral commissioners. Instead, INEC would make such appointments under a new title, State Directors of Elections. What's your reaction to that?
Well, let us state that, INEC as it is, presently constituted, the presidency has an overbearing influence on it. It is the president that decides who is going to be, who is going to be the chairman. He decides, and then of course he appoints the national electoral commissioners. You understand? So under that kind of circumstance, the man can put his loyalists all over the place. And don't forget, there has been a lot of allegations about APC card-carrying members being, electoral officers. And this is not supposed to be so. So now there has been, despite all those hues and cries, nothing has been done about it. You understand? So now, that is a worthwhile move. But how far can it go? That is something, because it takes enormous, massive opera to get the National Assembly to do the necessary amendment. If the presidency is hell-bent on not changing it, I don't see that happening, seeing the light of day.
All right. So that just basically means that they'll move. If this goes ahead, if the INEC is able to make such appointments and then start to have state directors of elections, what does that mean for elections generally now?
Yeah, well, it is not necessary that it does not necessarily translate to free and fair elections. Really,
It doesn't.
It doesn't necessarily.
Okay.
You know, it is still conditional. You know, because at the end of the day, the quality of human that you put there is, you know, it's something else entirely. If that person is crooked, but by and large, it gives the impression that it's going to be freer than what it currently obtains. You know, yeah, you could have a situation where look at what happened in Abia State, for instance. You know, that is one example of an independent-minded electoral officer deciding. You know, of course, when she came out, it was a vice chancellor, OT, by the name of OT. You know, he came out and said there were pressures on her. They came with all manners of precious money, intimidations, and the rest of them. But she decided to stand her ground. So those are the kind of, we are talking of, you know, the possibility of having those kind of, you know, electoral officer personalities, you know, being appointed. You know.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Good morning. What's your name and where are you calling from? 0807-777-9927 as number to call to be a part of the conversation and make a comment on any of the news stories that we're talking about. Please go ahead, Nicholas.
And of course, you see, in Kwara State, you equally had that example in Atahiru, you know, in 1919. There was tremendous, because I interviewed him and he told me about the huge pressures that was brought to bear on him, you know, to make that election that brought in the current administration. You understand?
The former rec.
The former rec, yeah, Atahiru, yeah. You know, so you see, you have such individuals all over the country. You understand? So that kind of framework, that kind of law, that alteration can allow for more of those kind of individuals to be in offices. You understand? So, yeah, by and large. But at the end of this, it still depends on individual. But what we are saying is that make the environment conducive enough to allow for people with credibility to emerge. So that is what they are trying to do.
So will that be achieved if INEC is, because some section of Nigeria, you know, believes that INEC is by the name Independent Electoral Commission, but not totally independent.
It is not by a long stretch.
Will this, you know, further give them the power
it
to
will.
be independent to appoint who they
exactly.
want?
You see, it's one thing to have a law. It's one thing to have people who understand the law.
Sorry to watch you again.
The framework.
Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Mr. Davis calling from Shao.
All right, Mr. Davis, please go ahead.
Yes, you see, on the issue of INEC proposal in appointing residential electoral officer by themselves, you see, it is not about INEC appointing. It is about having a God-fearing leader. If the president is a God-fearing leader, somebody who does not believe who believes that the blood of Nigeria does not worth its own gain, I think we won't have problem. You see, people during the Jega era, when the Andrade was on the wall, that the man was into something else. The letter still maintain his stand and say there is still nothing wrong in this man. Even when it was very, very clear and very clear to every one of us that the man is into something, the letter still maintain his stand that no, you should just give this man the element of doubt. Allow him to do his job. And we allow him. And we see what the guy is. But thank God, the letter is a global man today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. David.
Mr. Davis is quite right on one point, which is that you know, the rottenness of a fish starts from the head. You know, if the head is rotten, the entire body in no time will be corrupted. If the quality of president that you have, you know, if we have a system that allows for men of integrity, men who can't bend to, you know, whims, who understand that a good name is better than gold. You understand? We might not be talking about this law, for instance. We will not be talking about it. If you recall, Muhammadu Buhari, when he was in power, we actually believed that, all those stories about, all those fairy tales we were told about his mythical, integrity and things like that was put to test, and he failed woefully, especially in the area of the electoral integrity. You look at what happened in the case of the Supreme Court, removing the Supreme Court, the CGN, before and a major or Noggin. You understand? The court has cleared him now, but you see, you have to go to that extent to tamper with another arm of government. At the end of the day, based on mere speculations. So that is, Mr. Davis is quite right on it. But you see, we will always try to look for solutions, and that is what I think INEC is trying to do. To listen to a lot of hues and cries about the need to electoral integrity.
All right, just before we conclude the headline news this morning, let's squeeze in another story. We'll go back to River State. Okay. Well, the attention they will never be out of the
of course. As long as you have a sole administrator there, that was controversially imposed on them, it will always be like that.
All right, this time around, the suspended River State governor we're hearing, and that's similar to Fubara, has held a meeting with the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory in a renewed effort to mend their political rifts. The meeting, which took place at the Honorable Minister's residence, was facilitated by some big political figures. We have two governors, and that's the governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, Ebonyi State, Francis Umuforo, and a former governor of Ogun State, Olusegun Oshoba. Now, this is in a move to reconcile the two of them. And it was said that it was observed that the suspended governor, who reportedly walked straight into Wike's living room, pleaded with the minister in what has been described as a familiar and emotional encounter.
Well, you see, while we were talking about, I was very careful, when talking about that, imposition of emergency room. I was very careful in not speaking about the person of Fubara. You understand? All I was concerned about was the constitutionality of what the president did, and the actions of, or contradictory actions of the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike. You understand? I was careful not to, speak about the integrity of the man, because I've been issue, as far as I'm concerned, he has no integrity. You understand? He's the kind of man that has been on the watch list of EFCC, and the manner in which he was handpicked to come and so you are definitely going to expect that kind of rift when you have a spineless individual that can be influenced by anything. So, I am not carried away by it, whatever emotional, whatever, we are talking of a PDP man, a supposed PDP governor being surrounded by APC governor. Taking him to another PDP, so-called PDP, it tells the kind of convolution that we have in our political system. These are men without ideologies. You understand? So that is what it simply tells you, that these are people that are just out there to grab power. It's not as if they have any principle whatsoever, in getting into power. You understand? You see, if you say you subscribe to PDP, that means it's an ideology, it's a political choice that you willingly subscribe to. So it is not, when you have a conviction, it's not at any slight, threat of a, tempest, you are swayed. So you see, what makes you an individual is that the measure of resistance you put up. That is what makes you. That's what shows that you are really convinced about where you are. Not the kind of person, they removed you, in my opinion, unconstitutionally. You are there winding up and down, and so it doesn't. Men like that don't get my admiration whatsoever. So what you just see is just political charade. You should expect that when the manner in which you got into office as a governor is even suspect in the first instance.
Okay. Well, the report is also saying that the outcome of the meeting is very unclear, but is still following closely on the heels of Fubara's recent talks with President Bola Tinubu in London.
Yeah, look, you see, what is just simply happening is that they are trying to give him conditions. That is what is happening. It's just willing and dealing. Look, the lot of the Rivers man is not on the table there. You understand? It's just like, I most times I don't agree with Showore, but there are certain things that Showore, says that is quite true. He recently in the viral video, he said that he does not make it a habit to choose side between two thieves, squabbling over, loot. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that is the best way Nigerians should look at what is happening. These are two people squabbling over the loot that they are going to the River State, the Commonwealth of River State. That is what is happening. It's nothing more. There's absolutely nothing. So because if there are issues, what they should be focusing on that the constitutionality of the removal, the said removal of, because you see, all of a sudden constitutional matter has been swept under the rug.
Let me ask you this before we go real quick.
Yeah.
With the obvious romance of Governor, suspended Governor Simlaye Fubara by some, APC bigwigs. Do you think the suspended governor, parts of the conditions like you just mentioned earlier, do you see him jumping ship?
I won't be surprised. In fact, why hasn't he jumped? I'm wondering why he hasn't jumped ship. That is it. That is within his character portraiture. He's spineless. He's not the kind of person that is convinced about anything. That is my take about him. In fact, let me tell you, the only reason why he hasn't potted, as we put it in Nigeria, is because he's perhaps weighing the backlash in River State. That is probably because, you see, the texture of Niger Delta is either PDP or maybe any of those said. You see, that is a texture there. You understand? It will take a lot of, maybe if you have an APC, it's just out of political convenience. You understand? So, like I said earlier about Edo State, that they have a very strong presence of PDP and Labour there. So that is the thing. So he's only weighing the political backlash. That's why he hasn't potted. As a matter of fact, I think in spirit he's already there. He's only the physical flesh that is still in PDP.
All right, Nicholas, thank you so very much for your time this morning. And that's the size of the program. Thank you so very much for joining us. And thank you for the call. We got one call from Mr. Davids from Shaw. And I'm pretty much sure that a lot of Nigerians attempted to try to get in this morning but couldn't. We're back tomorrow, same time, 8 to 8:30. Thank you so very much. And enjoy the Workers' Day. Thank you a lot. And
thank you so much.
And thank you for speaking on the Workers' Day, the May Day celebration. Well, away from the promises that state governors and workers here every single time, single year when it's time to celebrate the workers. But at the same time, we need to put the message out there, justify why you're getting paid. You need to, show commitment on what you do. You got a conscience. You have a conscience. So justify why you're being paid. Show up at work. Do your best. And, of course, do things that are legal, okay? All right. My name is Adeyemi.
And the views expressed is not in any way the position of Flow FM 92.7, but as expressed by the analyst Nicholas this morning. I'm Danielle Shitta-Bey. We'll be back here tomorrow. Here to
You already know we keep it fun, fresh, and real. Mid-mornings with us, you won't want to miss it.
We bring the energy, the laughs, and of course the tunes that gets you through the day.
Afternoon on Flow FM, it's where the culture lives. Music, entertainment, and all the gist that you need.
And if it's trending, you already know we're talking about it.
Stay locked in, Lauren. It's Flow FM, baby.
The night's young, the vibes are right, and we are flowing past midnight. You ready to chill? Let's go.
Listen anytime, anywhere. Stream us live, call us, send us a WhatsApp message. We're just a tap away. Flow FM 92.7, your Go with the Flow radio station.